Here's the whole thing in regards to Cypherium. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. So, okay, here, Cypherium. Here's the Cypherium news. Listen to this. So, this is, of course, back to August 31st of 2022. You know, this whole talk, I've been seeing it quite often. Some guys I'm following, right? They retweet my stuff. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. But I even see, for instance, was it Sky Gua, or if I didn't pronounce that right, Cypherium. He's really gung ho about what Cypherium brings to the table because the FedNow connection and so on. I want you guys to listen to some of this because this is really something else, in my opinion. It is. So again, back to August 31st, 2022, FedNow is coming next year, and the Feds hope it's a crypto killer. Now, again, back to like a little bit more of what I was talking about earlier. The Fed hope it's a crypto killer, but yet you're going to implement some of this crypto technology with blockchain technology, and you hope it's a crypto killer. Again, back to the whole thing with Jerome Powell. Oh, we're ready to go live with instant payments, release it to the public soon. And oh, by the way, if we ever get a true CBDC, it's going to go to zero. I'm going to play this real quick, and we'll get into this particular outline. You want to hear this. This is again, it's so contradictory to where we're at right now. And then, if anything, look at this particular one. The Central Bank of the U.S. has scheduled the launch of its 24/7 payment service called FedNow for July 2023. And again, a lot of times people are making that connection, like, oh my God, I got to get more Cypherium before July. Just again, listen to this. So I'm gonna share this, of course, in a way for you can hear it because I had to share the wrong way. So I'm gonna play this. It's 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Let me know, whoever's here, if you're into this stuff, let me know what you think of this. Here we go.
FedNow is coming next year, and the Feds hope it's a crypto killer. The Central Bank of the US has scheduled the launch of its 24/7 payment service called FedNow for July 2023. FedNow is a system that can irreversibly settle international payments instantly at any time of the day, 365 days a year. The central bank will operate a pilot program beginning as early as September. More than 120 organizations, including banks and payments processors, will participate in the pilot. While many expected the Federal Reserve to deploy its own blockchain or use a central bank digital currency, FedNow does not use any form of blockchain technology to achieve these results. The value proposition of many cryptocurrencies,
Oh my God.
cheap, reliable, and irreversible.
Hold on a second. Did you hear what, guys? If you're just tuning in, what a time to tune in. Maybe I need to just replay that just a little. Let's jump back for just a second. If for any reason you just missed that, listen to what he says.
Will participate in the pilot. While many expected the Federal Reserve to deploy its own blockchain or use a central bank digital currency, FedNow does not use any form of blockchain technology to.
What? FedNow doesn't use any type of blockchain technology. The hell it ain't. I mean, if anything, what about the Cypherium connection here, right? And I think that's obviously a little big wave of people coming to Cypherium, but it's very contradicting. I understand, there's been other meetups since then and so on. But when you see this particular statement, the Central Bank of the U.S. has scheduled the launch of 24/7 payment service called FedNow for July 2023. That's like not even that far away from right now. We're going to play some more of this. Trust me, you have some juicy stuff to get into. This is kind of a deep dive, and I say this towards the end because the way I look at it is I was going to do an extended show. I didn't know it was going to approach 4 hours, but you know what? I'm going to get into this whether we have 30 or 50 or 100 people here, because I think, if anything, this is something that needs to be reminded to the people who are tuned in right now. Smash that like if you haven't done so already. Let's play some more of this.
To achieve these results. The value proposition of many cryptocurrencies, cheap, reliable, and irreversible payment settlements within seconds, is all possible with the FedNow system. How FedNow compares to credit cards or remittance providers. Today, nearly all commercial banks settle with finality on the books of the central bank. Only the Fed can ensure that one bank has debited dollars while another has received them with absolute assurance and irreversible finality. FedWire, the main payment network for settling interbank transactions on the ledger of the central bank, settles trillions of dollars every day. In a distant second and third place to FedWire are consumer payments networks Visa and MasterCard, which process hundreds of billions of transactions annually. Visa, for instance, handled over 164.7 billion transactions in 2021 and 140.8 billion in 2020. However, credit card transactions are not irreversibly settled until over 1 month after the original payment date. This allows time for chargebacks, fund transfers, and other dispute processes. Revocable credit card payments are faster, but still have to pass several hurdles before reaching the recipient's bank account, which can take days. Sending money through Western Union typically takes 24 hours for domestic transfers and up to 5 days for international transfers. How FedNow compares to blockchains. Blockchains certainly advertise faster settlement times than consumer payment options like bank checks or automated clearinghouse transfers. However, the irreversibility of blockchain payments usually depends on trusted operators of nodes or mining pools. Consider Bitcoin, the oldest and most decentralized blockchain network, which can trustlessly settle one block of approximately 2,000 payments every 10 minutes, plus good practice of waiting for 5 additional block confirmations to assure funds have irreversibly settled. In summary, Bitcoin can process about 12,000 payments per hour. Other blockchains advertise faster settlements by compromising on decentralization of nodes, block production security, or both, and so are not trustless in the sense of a global consensus of irreversible settlements. FedWire, by comparison, allows banks to trustlessly settle 811,472 transfers per day with other banks.
In the thousands. I mean, I didn't get the exact number there. In the really, you're going to brag about in the thousands? Last I checked, even with Hedera's H bar, like what they do, like 1 billion in a week or something like that. I mean, come on, they're not going to implement. They want this to be the crypto killer. Do they not understand that some of these banks are going to get hit with huge fees? This is a crock, to say the least. We're going to say the least. Let's get more into this.
Now will further accelerate payment settlement from days to seconds and give banks and businesses faster access to cleared money. FedNow also includes tools for fraud prevention and other value-added services. Most blockchains do not yet have sufficient decentralization, security, or scale to handle the settlement assurances of a central bank. If the Federal Reserve successfully launches its FedNow service in July, it could solve the needs of most consumers, businesses, and banks. Cheap, reliable, and irreversible payment settlements within seconds. For more informed news, follow us on Twitter and Google News.
All right, so you made me thinking, well, Max, again, that's just, a while back, so much things that happened from then and so on. Hey, I'm totally with you. And I do see some of you guys' particular comments in regards to, the depegging of USDC. We'll get more back into that in a bit. I want to show you guys just a little bit more in regards to this. So it says the Central Bank of the U.S. has scheduled, of course, the launch of its 24/7 payment service for now, July 2023. We know more about this, but says the central bank will operate its pilot program beginning as early as September. In regards to what you saw back then, that was again of last year. But here's the main thing I want to show you guys also, and that is, this right here, and this is the same lady who, she is part of FedNow, right? So we're going to play this. It says the value proposition of many cryptocurrencies, cheap, reliable, and irreversible payment settlements within seconds is all possible with the FedNow system. Okay. Again, this is August 29th of last year.
I'm pleased to join you at the FedNow Early Adopter Workshop. With the technical testing phase of the FedNow service kicking off in mid-September, I want to particularly thank you, the early adopters, for the important investments you're making to prepare for the day when the FedNow service goes live. Together, we'll be ready to launch the FedNow service between May and July of 2023, bringing this innovative core instant payments infrastructure to financial institutions of every size across America. We've been working hard to deliver on time, but ultimately the number of American businesses and households that are able to access instant payments will depend on financial services providers making the necessary investments to upgrade our payments infrastructure. Together, we can ensure all Americans have access to a modern and reliable instant payment system. The payment system is a critical part of America's infrastructure that touches everyone. Americans rely on the payment system all day, every day to make purchases, pay bills, and get paid without ever needing to think about the complex infrastructure that's operating under the hood. The FedNow service will transform the way everyday payments are made throughout the economy, bringing substantial gains to households and businesses through the ability to send instant payments at any time on any day with funds immediately available to recipients to make other payments or manage cash flow. Immediate availability of funds could be especially important for households managing their finances paycheck to paycheck or small businesses with cash flow constraints. Having the capacity to manage money in real time could help households avoid costly late fees or free up working capital for small businesses to finance growth. During the pandemic, we saw how essential rapid access to funds can be, as so many households started spending their emergency relief payments on the day they were received. To deliver on the promise of a payment system for the future, the Federal Reserve has made a substantial commitment to the FedNow platform, which has benefited from the technologies and approaches provided by global technology companies that are vital for today's always-on digital economy. Our cloud-first design, unique among central bank instant payment services, positions us for the future by enabling not only the throughput and scalability required for high-volume retail transactions, but also broad geographic points of resiliency to ensure continuous service. Cloud-first design affords other key components such as self-healing processes and automation, which add to operational resilience. And our development processes are agile, allowing us to deliver new features faster to financial institutions of all sizes as they're ready to adopt them based on their priorities. We've also invested heavily in stakeholder engagement to ensure readiness for adoption through efforts like the pilot program, the FedNow Explorer resource, the FedNow Community, the Service Provider Showcase, and the FedNow Early Adopter Workshop. To advance our goal of nationwide reach for instant payments, we are working closely with the private sector RTP instant payment service on message specifications to ensure alignment and support of routing interoperability. Just as the Federal Reserve has made a substantial commitment to our new instant payments infrastructure.
Hold on a second. So let's just hear that just for a brief second. Let's go back for a second.
To our new instant payments infrastructure. Reserve has made a substantial commitment to our new instant payments infrastructure. We're calling on industry stakeholders to do the same. The shift to real-time payments infrastructure requires a focused effort, but the shift is inevitable. The time is now for all key stakeholders, financial institutions, core service providers, software companies, and app developers to devote the necessary resources to support instant payments. That means upgrading back office processes, evaluating accounting procedures for a 7-business-day week, arranging liquidity providers, deploying a new customer-facing app, and promoting
lots of talk about apps, lots of talk about earlier, like with software.
Instant payments for key use cases to customers.
She talked about liquidity, key use cases.
As the service providers featured at this event will demonstrate over the next few days, parts of the industry have already seized on the opportunity to build new services and capabilities that support instant payments. These efforts will increase competition in the market for end user services and promote innovation. Key benefits from providing the FedNow service as a neutral platform accessible to financial institutions of all sizes around the country. Let me close by just again thanking our early adopters. The input you've provided has been instrumental for our team as they've designed and built this service, and the time and energy you've committed to this effort is critical for a successful launch. I want to call on additional banks and core service providers to join your commitment to prepare for adoption of the FedNow service. This time next year, I hope we can all have a great sense of accomplishment in our shared effort to transform America's payment system for the digital era. Thank you.
Again, it's just, I mean, it sounds good on paper what she's saying, right? Don't get me wrong. All right. So, some of the key things that she mentions, it has to be interoperable, the liquidity, the software. I mean, all these specific terms that just keep leading more and more back to what? Blockchain technology and things like that. I mean, heck, you can throw like quant in the mix with interoperability, right? All the time, right? But the key thing is, what you're going to see right here in regards to Cypherium, and I'm going to bring that up right now. So, Cypherium, of course, was featured in the Federal Reserve's FedNow Service Provider Showcase. Cypherium is proud to be featured in the Federal Reserve's new FedNow Service Provider Showcase, an online resource designed to connect financial institutions looking to adopt and innovate upon the FedNow service with service providers offering instant payment solutions. So when people, take more of their own deep dive into Cypherium, when you go from that particular interview to that gap in between of, the end of August 2022 to what happened, I guess, at the end of the year 2022 and where we're at now, it's pretty crazy. Now, Sky Guo, who's the CEO of Cypherium, mentioned he's thrilled to be part of that new FedNow Service Provider Showcase, to help other organizations implement instant payments with their solutions. Financial institutions, businesses, and consumers will be able to access the speed, convenience, and other benefits the FedNow service will provide when it launches in 2023. Now, I get the whole thing of other content creators. I mean, even Sean, he did a really good job, covering Cypherium continuously. He pointed out it's not that they, FedNow has officially said that they're going to use Cypherium, but they definitely acknowledge Cypherium, right? It's listed there. Again, a perfect example is like, here's the this beautiful car in the showroom. It just needs to be, somebody needs to take it out and drive the darn thing off the showroom, right? But they acknowledge that it's there. Now, regards to Cypherium, it says plans to offer instant payment services to organizations that are adopting the FedNow service. Cypherium is a blockchain platform for enabling faster payments and cross-platform interoperability. She did mention a few of those specific things. I know I mentioned the whole thing with quant, but here you have it, literally plain as day, written verbatim for you. Right? Cross-platform interoperability. Consumers may use Cypherium digital wallets to interact with the FedNow payment services. Look at this other particular quote from Frank van der Beel, if I'm pronouncing that right. He's the global collaboration manager from Randstad. He says, we appreciate the commitment of Cypherium enabling FedNow adoption and participating in the showcase. The time is now for organizations to identify and connect with partners they'll need to build the end-to-end solutions the market is demanding. And there's, of course, a lot of those particular demands. When we jump back in reflection to this particular outline, and if you're just connecting in regards to this, I mean, it's a nice time to connect, because when we get more into this, you will see this blast from the past, basically August of 2022, where it mentions that the FedNow compared themselves to credit cards or remittance providers. Now, listen to this. Back then, nearly all commercial banks, like they stated, settle with finality on the books of the central bank. Only the Fed can ensure that one bank has debited dollars while another received them with absolute assurance and irreversible finality. Understand this. When you have, what's his name, Augustine, who he is, the head honcho from the Bank of International Settlements, then you have a broader perspective of where it states that, nearly all commercial banks settle with the finality on the books of the central bank, hence why he comes in with the BIS. So when we go further down, it says the FedWire, the main payment network for settling interbank transactions on the ledger of the central bank, settles trillions of dollars every day. When we talk about this whole thing about cross-border payments, you can even get much higher than that, right? Quadrillions. And of course, this is where the whole concept of where is the value with how much these coins are going to be worth per token, per coin, right? A lot of talk about Ripple's XRP. Is it going to be worth 10,000 per coin? Even if they only take on a small percentage, or I don't know, was it something like 20% of all of this? How much is that really going to be worth? It's just nobody could really come up with an accurate prediction. But when we talk about Cypherium being part of the mix, if they get awarded this particular quote unquote contract to be exclusive to FedNow, then technically speaking, that would be all the money with specifically FedNow. Now, I get the whole concept of, there's other bigger players, other particular central banks. It's not going to just be them doing business with FedNow. Yes, absolutely. That's not the case. The central bank authorities of the world is a separate entity compared to the United States' FedNow services and so on. But you also got to keep in mind, like it also says right here, that a distant second and third place to FedWire are consumer payment networks such as Visa and MasterCard, which processes hundreds of billions of transactions annually. Visa, for instance, if you're wondering, handled over 165, might as well round it off, billion transactions in 2021 and 140.8 billion in 2020. However, credit card transactions are not irreversibly, settled until over 1 month after the original payment date. Hence the need for what? Real-time payment providers or instant payment providers, right? And we're going to see this go live here within literally the next few months. I know there's so much emphasis on ISO 222, right? And don't get me wrong, Cypherium apparently is part of ISO 222, but there's something to be said about what you see right here. So when we get further into this, it says that this allows time for chargebacks, fund transfers, and other dispute processes, and hence why it keeps delaying it and delaying it and delaying it. Why it could go up to a month. So it says, this whole thing with credit card payments are faster, but still have to pass several hurdles before reaching the recipient's bank account, which could take days. Of course, there's the whole thing with Western Union that could take forever, right? For domestic transfers, up to 5 days. For international transfers, it's insane, right? But in regards to FedNow, they compare to blockchains. This is where they make this particular debate that, killing crypto or whatever, right? So blockchain certainly advertise faster settlement times than consumer payment options like bank checks or automated clearinghouses. However, the irreversibility of blockchain payments usually depend on trusted operators or nodes or even mining pools. And that is true, right? Of course, we have to consider the whole thing of Bitcoin, but get down to this particular point, all right? So, listen to this. It says, other blockchains advertise faster settlements by compromising on decentralization of nodes, block production security, or both, and are so not trustless in the sense of a global consensus or irreversible settlement. Now, in regards to FedWire, right? Not FedNow, but FedWire. Hear me out, right? Because when we talk about with Ripple's XRP, you're not dealing, like they said, with the retail side, right? So with FedNow is more like, I guess you could say, with peer-to-peer, if I'm not mistaken. But with FedWire, it's kind of like that same comparison, if you will, kind of like with Ripple's XRP. So you have the bank-to-bank. FedWire would be more of kind of like the same concept. So with FedWire, by comparison, that also allows banks to trustlessly settle 811,472 transfers per day with other banks. FedNow will further accelerate payment settlement from days to seconds and give banks and businesses faster access to cleared money. FedNow also includes tools for fraud prevention and other value-added services. So when we had the whole discussion a while back of, this whole thing of like, does your particular blockchain not only have smart contracts, but do they have secure smart contracts? Hence why, we talk about Quant, what they bring to the table. All right. Look at some of these particular terms. All right. FedNow has a mechanism that includes some of those particular tools for fraud prevention and other value added services. I'm thinking like, okay, maybe this is some of the quote unquote reasoning behind the consensus of they're trying to say this is the, what's the original statement that said the crypto, hold on, coming next year and they hope it's a crypto killer. I mean, is it though? Or in reality, it's just, again, adapting some of the particular technology of Cypherium. They realized at some point that they had to, because what their original plan was not going to get the job done. That's just kind of like what I personally think. I'm not saying I'm right, but look at this. It says FedNow will further accelerate payment settlement from days to seconds and give banks and business faster access to clear money. If that's the case, and you're, what's his name, Augustine, right, CEO of the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, this particular statement of FedNow will further accelerate payment settlement from days to seconds and give banks and businesses faster access to cleared money. That really like resonates deep, right? So while they recognize it's there, I'm telling you flat out. I mean, for them, for FedNow to recognize Cypherium and say, yeah, we recognize it and not use it, to me, that'd be ludicrous at this point. Unless they're going back on the whole thing of going back to this, and this is why I'm pointing this out to you guys. Unless they're going back on the whole thing of like, you don't mention, you don't see really Cypherium being mentioned here. But when we went back to the other particular page straight from Cypherium, you do see that particular connection because literally it is there. It says most blockchains do not yet have sufficient decentralization, security, or scale to handle the settlement assurances of a central bank. If the Federal Reserve successfully launches its FedNow service in July, it could solve the needs of most consumers, businesses, and banks, cheap, reliable, and irreversible payment settlements within seconds. Now, before we take even that much more of this particular deep dive into this, and why some people feel as though like, why are you trying to make this controversial? I'm not trying to make it controversial, but I'm trying to have people realize of what, where we went from when this was originally published to where we're at now. And people also realize that when you have the certain banks like Bank of America and that particular Ripple partnership, like, what was it that was mentioned quite a few times? Bank of America has stated that, like if I should say stated, but there's everything in line to show support that if the SEC loses the Ripple case and it's a Ripple win, that literally Bank of America will fully utilize Ripple's services, right? And you already have that particular partnership. The key takeaway here is not that, it's Cypherium versus Ripple versus some of these other ones. The key takeaway here is what you literally saw on the other particular page. FedNow is just, they're not the end all be all for all the world's money. Let's face it, right? I mean, it's big for us here in the United States, but there's so many other bigger players. But that in itself, to see even some of these particular things mentioned, 811,472 transfers per day. I'm going to pull that up because I want to show you guys this for just a brief moment. And here it specifically is. This is part of my particular deep dive. So, Fedwire Fund Service annual statistics. All right, this was actually updated on January 21st, 2023. If you want to have an idea of about how the combination of ISO 222 and the massive volume of things being implemented, where you can see significant price action, this should give you like a brief idea of that. Because when I look at the overall market, and I saw it tank something fierce today. All right, we'll jump into that right now, actually. I'm pulling up Cypherium. Okay. And, it's been really like fluctuating like crazy. So, Cypherium is like, we saw this go back into the fours. I don't know, it's fluctuated between being up 8%, 16%, but there's a lot of weird, crazy stuff going on, and as you can see that on this particular graph, and even on the 7-day chart, right? It's kind of like all over the place. But I know I'm doing a bunch of, jumping back and forth, but I do this for a reason. Now, let me go back to this. Here it is again, straight from the Federal Reserve FRBServices.org, FedWire Funds Services annual statistics, again, January 24, 2023, pretty recent. You have annual FedWire Fund Service statistics, right? Here's some of those specific statistics. Let's just go back to, for instance, 2022. You have transfers originated number 196,052,000, annual volume growth percent. Look at some of these figures. Value transfers originated in millions. You see that right here. Annual value growth in percent, 6.9%. Average value per transfer per millions. Now you may be wondering, well, why even point some of this out? You got to point some of this out to give you a broader sense of where we're going to go with some of this. So if you have the average daily volume of transfers, like you see right here, and so on, it should give you a broader perspective of how, I don't know, in my opinion, how big this could be. Because, I mean, this thing is going to go live here soon. You're going to see this specific mechanism kick into place. And here's the real kicker. As we know, with certain cryptocurrencies, whether it's Ethereum and so on, if you have utility being activated over and over and over, that in itself is why we put so much emphasis on utility-driven cryptos. Combine this with Cypherium, with that utility, again, being used over and over and over, I just think this is a real sleeper, personally. All right. There's another thing I wanted to show you guys in regards to all this. Give me a second. Yeah, it's straight from the Cypherium site. And, you know, my thing is, I just want people to kind of have, I guess you could say, a little bit more of a broader perspective. You know what I mean? Here's the one last thing I want to show you guys, and this dates all the way back to March 8th of 2022, literally this time last year. So if you're wondering, you know, this is not that big of a deal, I don't know where you're going with this and so on, well, maybe this will help you. So again, part of my deep dive in regards to Cypherium. So it says Cypherium featured in the Federal Reserve's FedNow Service Providers Showcase. All right. So, you know, of course, they were proud to be featured in that particular showcase. But again, you know, it's this plans. Look at what it says right here. Cypherium plans to offer instant payment services to organizations that are adopting the FedNow service. So it's not just like, oh, hey, we got FedNow. This is a really cool thing. And, you know, obviously it's the utility going to be utilized. No, it's like it says right here, Cypherium is a blockchain platform for enabling faster payments and cross-platform interoperability. Consumers may use Cypherium digital wallets to interact with the FedNow services. So when you heard the comment, and I don't even know if he's listening, it's okay if he's not. Mike Cornwell mentioned all the way back to last summer, and he mentioned it numerous times. Okay, I have to mention him because I got to give credit where credit's due. Like a lot of why we even have this channel is because a lot of his particular research and so on, like giving us a reference to all this stuff, tuning us into it. He mentioned specifically when you have, there's going to be a moment in time where, you know, like your grandma, yourself, whoever, you bust out that debit card, you don't even realize it's tied into crypto. How do you know that? This particular statement: consumers may use Cypherium digital wallets to interact with the FedNow services. So whether it's a physical debit card, like his particular example, or this particular example of a digital wallet to interact with the FedNow services, the whole point is using that utility of the FedNow services. And people will use those darn services. You better believe, bet your sweet Aunt Mary on it. Look at this. We appreciate the commitment of Cypherium to enabling the FedNow adoption and participating in the showcase, said Nick Stanescu, I'm not pronouncing that right probably, Federal Reserve Bank Senior Vice President and FedNow Business Executive. The time is now for organizations to identify and connect with partners they'll need to build the end-to-end solutions the market is demanding. What do we know what's going on right now within the next few weeks? The market is demanding these particular technologies. Yes, you hear Powell saying, you know, CBDCs 2.0, but on the other freaking hand, he's mentioning about instant payments. You know, it'd be one thing if he mentioned, like, no, there is going to be no instant payments. Like, that would be something in itself. I'd be like, oh my God, that's a bombshell, right? But that wasn't the case. He mentioned specifically about this whole thing of instant payments and how it's going to be readily to the public. Are we not paying attention to this stuff? So look here, it says a little bit about Cypherium. I want you guys to hear this, right? I know I turn this to a big focus on Cypherium, but I really feels like we really need to pay attention to Cypherium, and hence why here at CTN we include it as part of the ones that we cover. Shout out to CryptoSmith, right? Sean the CryptoSmith. If you don't know about Cypherium, follow CryptoSmith, right? We'll give him a plug in a bit. But check this out. Cypherium, if you didn't know about it, layer 1 protocol designed to offer financial inclusion for its users while delivering operational efficiencies for its enterprise and institutional partners. Institutional partners. What is the world crying for? Literally, well, at least us in crypto, regulatory clarity. Once you get regulatory clarity, you get that institutional money coming in. Efficiencies for enterprise, right? Not dismissing and slapping enterprise, but recognizing enterprise and institutional partners using a hybrid consensus mechanism. Key thing here. The Cypherium blockchain is designed to achieve commercial viability while preserving the characteristics of decentralization and distributed ledger technology. Understanding, look, we're not dismissing traditional finance, but we're at the same time, we are acquiring the new technologies to get the job done. Perfect example is like what Crypto Weather was mentioning in regards to Swift. It's not that Swift is going away. If anything, it's that Swift is still here, but they may be implementing some of these newer technologies. Now I get the whole thing of, what you were saying with comparing the competition, but I wanted to point that out. Now look at this. As proof of work blockchain, Cypherium does not run the risk of being classified as a security. God. So already you have something that, in my opinion, is going to be used by FedNow. It'd be ludicrous for them not to at this point, right? As the instant payment settlement rails, if you will. And then on the other hand, you have Ripple's XRP, which has been absolutely just disrespected, and they're in that situation they're in with the SEC. So my thing is this. I want people to know that I'm a huge fan of Ripple's XRP, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm more of a fan of Cypherium. That's not about that. But I want to have everyone pay attention, whether it's Jasmine, like, when I say something like Jasmine could be the one that gets me to, $1 million, millionaire status first. At the same time, do not dismiss Cypherium as being one of the players of your ISO portfolio that could very well get you there first. Here, of course, is why we're mentioning that. So, God forbid, I hope to God that, Ripple wins the case. We're all rooting for that. Are you kidding me? But at the same time, if worst case scenario happens and this gets dragged out through the mud, like what, CryptoSmith was mentioning, where there ends up being a trial eventually, when you see this particular statement here, Cypherium, and I'll highlight it again, does not run the risk of being classified as a security. Now, I understand that this is just them stating it. What particular site is this from again? This is PR Newswire and so on. So I mean, this is a third-party outlet providing the news, but it does, make you wonder. I'm going to highlight that particular spot again because I don't want to lose it. Yes, Cypherium does not run the risk of being classified as security. That's big. That tells me that somebody like the SEC would not necessarily go after it. Why wouldn't they go after it? Well, again, if you're tied into the FedNow system, that wouldn't make sense because that would be technically going after them as well. If they're using this technology, it's like a conflict of interest, if you will. All right, I'm gonna get a little more into this, and this is a real deep. So it says Cypherium's approach to creating financial inclusion between civilians, banks, government, and enterprises begins with their digital currency interoperability framework, which is called DCIF. The DCIF is Cypherium's proprietary architecture for allowing any asset, including central bank digital currencies, stablecoins, and digital assets, to be received or distributed on-chain or cross-ledger. I came out with that other particular video recently. It's not that long. It's probably like, 12 minutes or something like that. Talks about Cypherium basically being the gas for CBDCs, like digital oil, if you will. This kind of pounds it home a little bit more. It says, furthermore, it can be integrated with payment service providers, banks, and digital wallets. Now, in regards to the FedNow service and so on, they of course have specific information here and whatnot. One thing I want to mention is what they serve, right? Just in closing. So it says access will be provided through the Federal Reserve's FedLine network. Now that specific network serves more than 10,000 10,000, my God, financial institutions directly or through their agents for more information, of course, and so on. So when we talk about all this focus about the central banks of Europe and so on, that's nothing to dismiss. And we have at least 100 plus of those central banks and so on. It's big. But when you see some of these, this was mentioned here, Federal Reserve's FedLine network serves more than 10,000 financial institutions. To think that Cypherium won't be used here and that this is just a giant waste of time and it's just going to sit at where it's at, I'm extremely bullish on Cypherium.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have not yet subscribed, do yourself a favor and subscribe for more information on the ISO 222 compliant tokens, and hit the notification bell to make sure that you are aware of the new videos when they come up. Max and I cover these ISOs, and we also have a live show every single night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you tune in for that. You won't want to miss it. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next video.